Ajcon, in its endeavor to educate and spread awareness about the equity markets and the economy, organizes webinars with relevant topics by bringing in experts to share their wisdom. Today's topic, Indian economy faces tough challenges. Why are the stock markets booming? Is an attempt to decode and assess the economic scenario of our country. And to do so, we have amongst us two best minds, Mr. Soumyakanti Ghosh, Chief Economist Advisor, SBI, and Mr. Saugata Bhattacharya, Executive Vice President and Chief Economist, Axis Bank. Although the economic scenario looks bleak and in shambles, our bourses continue to touch new highs. Why is it happening? And what should an investor do at such times? To help us walk through these difficult questions, we have with us Mr. Dipan Mehta, Director, Elixir Equities Private Limited. And before we move on, let me first introduce our esteemed panelists. Let me begin with Dr. Soumyakanti Ghosh. He's a Group Chief Economic Advisor, SBI. Mr. Soumyakanti Ghosh is currently Group Chief Economic Advisor, State Bank of India. Previously, he has worked at the ICRIER, FICCI, Tata AI, American Express, and ICRA, among others. Soumya has more than 2.5 decades of experience with the corporate world, academic institutions, research bodies, industry chamber of commerce, and country's largest bank, SBI, that accounts for almost 18% of India's GDP. Dr. Soumya has also been a visiting faculty to IIT Kanpur and IIT Rohtak and peer group of IIT Jodhpur evaluation committees. He is also a member of SEBI Advisory Committee on Research, Economic Advisory Council, CII, and Editorial Advisory Board of Indian Institute of Banking and Finance. Dr. Ghosh has been ranked as one of the best individuals in research in India by the Asset magazine. Soumya has consistently ranked in the top 3 Bloomberg as a professional economist for currently predicting future trajectories of macroeconomic variables like inflation. Dr. Ghosh received his PhD in economics from Jawaharlal Nehru University. Welcome, Dr. Ghosh. May I now introduce our second panelist, Mr. Saugata Bhattacharya. Mr. Saugata Bhattacharya is an Executive Vice President and Chief Economist at Axis Bank. He is a member of the PGDM Executive Council of the National Institute of Bank Management, NIBM, Pune. He is a member of CII National Exim Committee. He has worked with IDFC and HUL prior to his current role. He was named a Chevening Fellow at King's College, UK in 2017. He is a personality who is the most sought after by the news channels to get his views and wisdom, especially after the RBI policies. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the webinar today. Our next speaker, Mr. Dipan Mehta. Dipan Mehta is the CEO and MD of Elixir Equities Private Limited, a respected stockbroking house offering the entire gamut of stockbroking, portfolio management, and demat services. Elixir Capital, the holding company of Elixir Equities, is a BSE listed company with over 1,500 shareholders. Elixir has launched India's first smart investing platform, which is an automated portfolio management application designed to identify weak underperforming stocks and offer suggestions to replace these with high quality, outperforming shares. Dipan is a qualified chartered accountant. In 1992, the Bombay Stock Exchange offered membership to the exchange for a second time in its history to qualified professionals. Dipan Mehta, being a first generation businessman and professional, applied in this category and was selected by the BSE board from a pool of over 300 applicants. His views and thoughts are well sought after by the media, and he is a regular invitee on most TV channels, be it CNBC, ET Now, CNBC Awaaz, CNBC Bazaar, Bloomberg, Star News, Zee Business. He's a very well-known face to all of us. He also has addressed investor conferences on behalf of CNBC and BSE Training Institute in the various Indian cities. Welcome, Dipan. Welcome.
Thank you for
this webinar. And before I hand over the proceedings to Mr. Ajmera, who is the moderator of this show, I would like to introduce him as well. So Dr. Ashok Kumar Ajmera is a qualified chartered accountant and with over 40 years of experience in corporate advisory services, capital market, merchant banking, investment banking, and financial re-engineering. He has been conferred upon the honorary doctorate in financial management by the South Korea, KIU. Presently, he is the chairman of Ajcon Global Services Limited and Ajcon Group of Companies, engaged in the entire gamut of financial services, merchant banking for advising and managing on IPO valuations and M&A listing on stock exchanges, investment banking. With this, he is also on the board of several committees with NSE, BSE, National Association bodies of brokers, and he is a very active social person, being there on Rotary and GITO and Veg Federation and Mahavir International and several such more social organizations. So With this, I would like to hand over the proceedings to Mr. Ashok Kumar Ajmera. Just one thing I want to tell our viewers today. We have almost 175 viewers now, that we will be having a chat with the panelists first, and then we will open to question and answers. So if anybody has any question, you can also put it in the chat box or raise your hand at whenever you want to ask a question. Okay, sir. Thank you, Mr. Ajmera. Thank you. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankit. Good evening, friends. I welcome all our panelists, Dr. Soumya Kanti Ghosh, Saugata Bhattacharya, Dipan. They're all my very good friends. And all of you, my dear friends, who have joined. Some of you are even from USA, especially, Anup Tatiaji from USA has also joined. So many of our investors, friends, corporates, clients, chartered accountant friends, people from the financial markets, Rotarians, they all joined for this very important webinar today, this afternoon. And I'm very much thankful to all of them and welcome them. Now, friends, as you all know, I mean that, mainly, finally, because of the COVID, our economy was otherwise also of late was not doing well. There was a lot of pressure on the economy, and thereafter this COVID-19 happened. So instead of me telling you where do we stand today, may I ask my friend Soumya Kanti Ghosh first to just enlighten us about the present state of Indian economy, and then we can take the things forward little later. So what is the state of our economy today, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Ajmera ji, and nice to be over here. So as we speak today, the markets have already jumped again today, and US yields also are at very comfortable numbers. So I think Dipan will speak more on this, but not to mind as long as the markets are going up. So even though they are divorced from the realities, and that's a fact not only in India, it's globally. It happened after 2008 also, and this time also is happening. I don't want to get into that market one, but the important point to note over here is that there are a couple of things which I'd like to mention today. Is that the first thing is that I think the economic outlook as of today, if you ask me, doesn't look that promising. If I just speak in a simple layman's terms language, our outlook projections for next year, growth outlook projections is actually on the lower side than what the market is expecting. In fact, when the economy was open last time and there was a whole lot of pent-up demand happening and everybody was very bullish, we had actually stuck to a growth rate which was a little lower than the market expectations. But because we knew that there could be some sort of a wave which could come, even though, I mean, we did not anticipate the ferocity of this wave so much. But when we looked at the data, I think the data was exactly as it had happened in the other countries. For example, in the second wave, the peak was in most of the other countries was 5 times higher than the first wave. For the India, the peak was 4.2 times. So, and if you look into the other things, I think most of the things played out as it had happened in the other countries. But to cut that story short, I think this time the problem has been that the rural economy has been almost devastated by the COVID second wave. The total amount out of the 640 districts which the data is given out by the government, 35% of the districts are rural, whereby the number of the CFR, the cumulative fertility rate, is significantly higher than the India average. And some of these states actually, like Punjab, like Haryana, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, wherever you look into the data, the CFR is significantly high, and we are actually a significant antecedent to show that there has been several the families which have been impacted by them. The important point to note is that the urban areas actually are only the total number of urbans which had a CFR of more than India average was only 47. So that means that this time the cases has more been on the rural side. And the other thing is that most of these rural states whereby the cases have happened, different per capita income which is higher than India. For example, Maharashtra is one of them. Then Telangana is also happening, is one of them. Andhra Pradesh is one of them. So if you take that as the benchmark, so the point to note here is that even though the loss to the output this year will be much lower than what had happened last year. So basically last year we had a 26% GDP contraction in the first year. So this time the first quarter could be look much better. But thereafter the growth will be very gradual and slow. So therefore, even though the loss would be on the lower side, but since given that the rural economy is not so much resilient, so it will take a longer time for them to recoup the losses, or even not able to recoup the entire losses. So therefore, even if the loss could be on the lower side, it will remain on the lower side. So that is the problem this side. And the other thing is that if you just construct the economy in terms of the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, the death rates in the tier 3 and the tier 4 cities are also, some of the states are 12 to 13 times higher than what it happened in the first wave. So therefore, the COVID has actually actually led to a trail of destruction and devastation in the rural areas. The good thing is that in the last 6 to 7 days, the reports which are getting that as the economy is getting opened up, the recovery rate is actually happening the way we had thought, and our SBI business activity index has now moved up to 73 within a span of 2 weeks. We were at 61, now we have moved to 73, but it is purely because of the mobility numbers and the good arrival of food grains at the mandis. However, the important point to say is that the hypothesis that mobility will lead to higher GDP, as it had happened in most of the countries, is unlikely to happen for India this year, because the health infrastructure has significantly dwarfed the mobility channel. So therefore, the health infrastructure channel, and if you look into India's numbers, India spends around 6 lakh crores in FY20. They spent 6 lakh crores on the total health expenditure in the PFCA, private and consumption expenditure. This number could actually go up by at least 1 lakh crore this year. So therefore, there is an element of increased household expenditure. There's an element of household distress. And so therefore, even if the recovery will happen and it will be, and the loss will be lower than the last year, I think it will be a painful one. And finally, the important point to note is that if you look into the policy prescriptions, I think we can have a discussion on that later. I think the monetary policy has played its course, but currently what has happened is that, taking advantage of the low interest regime, there's been significant amount of corporate deleveraging, and corporates have actually raised resources from the markets, whereby they are getting rates at very low rates. So therefore, high cost debt are being substituted by low cost debt. So in such a scenario, I think fiscal policy could be the only lever to rekindle animal spirits, because monetary policy has perhaps exhausted all the options. So from that point of view, if an activist fiscal policy happens, then there could be some relief. Otherwise, the news which we are getting today, for example, yesterday, the news which we are getting today in terms of a new mutant Delta variant coming in, for which the number of doses, the gap between the first and the second doses could, the other countries are significantly reducing it. So I think these are all disturbing news. Hopefully, I still believe that we have that the vaccination numbers that the government is giving out will be is believable and doable, and not fully aspirational. So if that is the case, in that case, we can actually look for a good amount of recovery in the second half. But as of now, I am keeping my fingers crossed in terms of an growth outlook as well as inflation outlook for the current fiscal. I would like to end here, and you can now. I think Ajmera is on the line.
Ashok ji, you can take over, sir.
Yeah, Ashok ji, you can take over. Hello, you can take over. I just heard from Ashokji that there is some connectivity issues. So he requested that if Shogato can take over from here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Shomo. Ashok Saab and the rest of the participants, thank you very much for this opportunity. So, मेरा अंदाजा है कि it is useful at this stage to see where we are going in terms of a short term, a medium term, and a long term view. क्या क्या चीज हो सकता है. So obviously, as Ashok Saab said, that we had already come into this in the COVID crisis in a fairly weakened state. But wo kya raha tha ki in early 2020 there were signs that the economy was reviving. थोड़ा बहुत capex आ रहा था, capacity utilization was higher, and then the COVID crisis struck. So in the short term, this year, our own our GDP growth forecast is anywhere between 9 to 10%, plus 9 to 10% growth. We had started in pre-COVID second wave at about 11.8%. वहाँ से लेके it's about centered around 9.5%. As Shomo also mentioned, we don't know how whether the third wave will come in. Everything now depends upon vaccines, the vaccine coverage, which as of this point in time doesn't look too good. It will take at least till September, October to cover 40-50% of the population. So that's a given. Problem was, even for the last 4 or 5 years, investment had been coming down. Investment growth, investment as a percentage of GDP. हम लोग पता है कि because of the deleveraging, the balance sheet problems, so investment was coming down. Now the problem that has arisen is that even consumption seems to have become weak. Consumption used to be for the last 4 or 5 years till about from FY17, FY13 to FY17 was about 6 to 7% वहाँ पे hobble कर रहा था. Then suddenly in FY20 it came down to 5.5% growth, YOY growth of consumption, and then it plummeted to minus 9%. That I think is the biggest problem. As Shomo also mentioned, household costs, healthcare costs for households is biting very, very severely. एक पुराने survey में it was shown that out of the total healthcare expenses for a year, for the year, household out-of-pocket expenses was about 63%. अभी तो और ज़्यादा हुआ होगा. I mean, I'm sure it's, as Shomo also mentioned, 6 lakh crores. I'm sure it's even more. So that's a very deep hit on pockets. All of you know that. I mean, we've all heard of friends, acquaintances having to spend more. We have even heard instances now that many small and micro business enterprises, even medium, small and micro business enterprises are deferring payments of EMIs to pay for medical expenses. So that's a very, very severe problem. Problem with this 9%, 10% growth story, GDP growth, is that if you think of in comparison to where we would have been, say from before, if this COVID thing had not hit, so a growth of 6%, 6.5% plus 4.5% inflation. So given where we are now, given where we are now, हम लोग over the last 3 years, we would easily have lost 50 से 60 lakh crore का income permanent gaya. So that's a problem. Even bigger problem than this, ये गया कहाँ? कि where has this, which segments of industry, household, society would have gone, would have taken this loss? And all data suggests now that the biggest hit has come in from the mid-tier companies, and particularly from the micro and the small enterprises. There are so many surveys now on the hit to micro and small businesses. Each of them indicate that anywhere between 25 to 35% are permanently gone. Those businesses are lost. People are somehow managing cash flows. Nahi hai, cash flows have been hit. RBI has done a lot too. RBI with the government, the ECLGS program has helped a lot. But essentially cash flows have taken a major hit. So given this is the condition that we are now starting with. That, I mean, in the short term, This quarter, I mean, we are beginning to open up as Shomu also indicated, the moment we begin to open in the absence of vaccines, infection rates will again begin to go up. Yeah. So what is the appropriate mix for lockdowns, etc., versus the actual loss of businesses? So how much infections can be tolerated versus how much loss can be tolerated? So mera khayal hai, at this point in time, we cannot afford for any large scale lockdown, not even the scale, forget the last year, not even the scale that we have seen this time. The government, the medical scientists have to use data very intensively. GSTN ka data hai, ICMR has a lot of infections data. So all of this data needs to be now used if there are again increases in infection rates to see kahan pe micro lockdowns, micro containment zones, etc., to be able to balance now till we reach some level of vaccines till about say October, November, etc. So some level of vaccination. Tab tak ke we need to have a very, very detailed data-driven containment strategy in order to get the next round of the viruses. Thank you.
The view on the Indian economy from both our economists. Now let us hear from you, Deepan. What is the current state of the capital market in India? And how would you describe it? What is our current state? Because we have already heard about the economy. Now let's hear about the capital market.
Okay. At the outset, it's really a privilege to be present over here, addressing this webinar with such luminaries like Mr. Ghosh and Mr. Bhattacharya, who I admire really, and I have been seeing their views on all the media channels, and I hear them quite keenly. So thank you for inviting me. I've just prepared a very short slideshow, just about 4 slides, which I'd like to share with you, which will tell us about the state of the economy. 1 minute. Yeah. Is this visible? Ashokji, is this visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. So I know that both my panelists are a bit negative on the economy, but I'm here to spread some positive news, or I'll say positivity about what's happening, because the stock markets are really booming and at all-time highs. So my assessment is that we are in the midst of a raging bull market. And if any bull market requires 2 major, I would say, drivers. One is the earnings growth, and second is easy liquidity. So we all know that the stock price comprises of the EPS and the price to earnings multiple. So if the EPS is moving up, then stock price will move up. And if the price to earnings multiple is moving up, then also the stock price moves up. And in the present situation, we have the earnings moving up. And because of easy liquidity, the valuation ratios also are moving up. So let's go to the real reason why we are having an earnings growth at this point of time. So what had happened is that I also heard my co-panelists say that last 3-4 years, the economic cycle had been really downbeat. And it was an overall, I would say, very tough period for the Indian economy, for industry. And there were many reasons, but even during this weak economy, we had to deal with demonetization, implementation of GST, and then we had this whole IL&FS crisis. And then we entered into COVID-19 on a very, very weak economic footing. But as you all know that there are cycles in the economy, and these cycles may last from 3 to 5 years or so. And my guess is that maybe we are coming to the end of a down cycle in the economy, and now finally getting into a nice upswing as far as the economy is concerned. And a lot of the problems, part structural, partly cyclical in nature, have now been addressed. And what we are getting into is from a vicious cycle to a virtuous cycle. So in the earlier 3-4 years, because one sector was doing badly, it was pulling the other sector down, and that was pulling the third sector down, and so on and so forth. And the sentiment in the economy, in the stock market, was not that great. But now what we are seeing is that one sector of another sector is doing far better. Growth rates have improved over there. And therefore, they are pulling the other sectors also up along with them, because one sector is a feeder to the other one. So from a vicious cycle, we have gone on to a virtuous cycle. That's one of the reasons. So first reason, of course, is the entire economy, the economic cycle is looking up. Second is that I think globally also we are feeling the global economy is doing well, especially developed economies like US, Europe, China, rest of Asia also all doing much better after this particular pandemic. Of course, they are way ahead in terms of solving their health crisis, and we'll soon get there. So exports are doing very well. Service exports, product exports across the board, I think we are seeing that exports are doing very well. And that's a huge sector, which is a very important factor for the economy. And that also takes earnings higher because a lot of Indian companies are export oriented. And then, of course, because of the commodity cycle, we are seeing that a lot of earnings growth is coming because commodity prices are also moving up. Another reason is that why we are seeing the earnings should do very well from this point on is that because of all the various measures that the government has taken, especially demonetization and GST, we are seeing a lot of shift of earnings and revenues from the unorganized sector to the organized sector. And mind you, it's the organized sector which is comprising of the listed companies. So while optically appears that the economy is in shambles and small businesses, SMEs are in crisis situation and many sectors have huge problems, but the organized players within the sector are steadily gaining market share, and that's reflected in the earnings growth rate. So let me give you a few examples. I think if you're a small jewelry company or a jewelry retailer, you may feel that there is hardly any sales and you're facing very challenging times. But if you look at the commentary coming from Titan or Kalyan Jewelers for that matter, they're extremely upbeat, which means that they are gaining market share at the expense of the unorganized sector. And this particular trend is across the board, be it in real estate, auto ancillary, any form of services. And we will see it even in some of the other touch point businesses once the unlock process starts over there. So we are seeing that there is a huge upswing or earnings growth coming in because of shift from unorganized to organized. And lastly, I think a lot of technological changes are taking place. A lot of it driven because of COVID, where now companies want to do everything on the cloud. They want to do from remote locations. They want to use more and more digital applications within their systems and how they connect with customers, with suppliers, with employees. And that in itself is creating a huge surge in earnings because they're able to save costs. I think if you see the earnings season for the last 2-3 quarters or so, we have seen an expansion of the operating profit margins, largely because although revenues have remained stable or even slightly lower, companies have been able to cut their marketing costs, their employee costs, their travel costs, and various other cost centers have reduced significantly. And a lot of these gains or I would say benefits of cost saving will continue to accrue even when the economy actually starts to open up and the lockdowns restrictions are lifted. So that's another aspect why earnings are going up very strongly. And generally, we have been seeing last 4 or 5 years, you've been seeing on newspapers as well as on channels that a lot of us analysts were always disappointed because earnings were just not keeping up. Stock prices were going up or remaining there, but earnings were lagging. But I think this time around, you will see that the earnings will clearly surprise you on the positive side. Another reason for stock market booming is higher liquidity. And we have all heard this, that liquidity is mother's milk of any bull market. And what we are seeing is a surge in global liquidity, and we are seeing a surge in domestic liquidity as well. So what are the reasons for that? First, I think that the FIs have been around in India for decades. And now we are a well-discovered market for the global investors. They are comfortable investing in India and they are comfortable allocating higher and higher of their fund size into India. We have good corporate governance standards. Our trading and settlement systems are best in the world, very strong regulatory environment, and the actual liquidity in the markets is very strong, which enables global fund managers to enter and exit the market in a very easy way with limited impact costs. So liquidity is a very key factor, and we are seeing liquidity coming in. Of course, you will have a month, a day or 2-3 days of negative FI flows, but by and large, I think we are going to see very strong flows coming in from overseas investors. a lot of the index companies like MSCI are gradually increasing the weightage for index, and therefore all the index funds which track the MSCI in the index, even if they are not that fond of India, because the weightages keep on rising, they are forced to invest into India. So I think we are seeing super flow coming in from the global investors. At the same time, retail participation is also at all-time highs. And we know the reasons for that. I think we have seen the emergence of a lot of discount brokerages, and stock trading has gone to the tier 2, tier 3 cities and towns. And a whole new generation of investors is entering the market. They are comfortable buying stocks using their mobile applications. There's a great deal of support available to them by these brokerages in terms of research and trading support. And the entire process of opening a broking account, demat account, and actually trading and settling has become so easy that it has attracted a lot of new money into the equity market. And let's not forget that at present in India, we are seeing a wealth effect. I mean, I know that the sentiment is down for the time being because of the health crisis, but last few years we have seen a super wealth effect. A lot of new age businesses have created many millionaires and billionaires, and these individuals, young investors, are looking to invest into equities as a means of managing their savings. So this is the reason why I say that we are in the midst of a multi-year bull market, and the reasons are very clear. Earnings are moving up significantly because of the reasons I mentioned, and coupled with earnings, we are seeing very good liquidity flow. So we have the two basic engines for a bull market. They're completely in place, and I think that the stock markets can move significantly higher from these levels over the next 2-3 years. Once you're over and done with this pandemic, I think that pent-up demand will again come into play, and we should see very good growth in terms of earnings and stock market as well. So that's as far as my discussion on the equity is, on the state of the stock market is concerned. I would like to hand over back to Dr. Ajmera.
Yeah, thank you, Dipan, for taking us through the entire journey of the capital market, and very, very optimistic note, because everybody otherwise other than the capital market is in a very gloomy situation. The COVID, and especially the month of April, was absolutely devastating as far as the health and the lives of the people are concerned. But sir, coming back to you, Saugata ji, when we are talking about the, like Dipan has explained us, earning growth in the companies, very optimistic, future for the corporate earnings growth, the market, and multi-year bull run. Why are so many institutions and the leading economists are reducing our GDP growth target? Like today only the World Bank, if you see, they reduced it by almost about 160, 170 basis points to 8.3, our GDP growth for 21-22, and even much lower for even 22-23 also. Our own friend, Dr. Soumya Kanti Ghosh, has reduced the GDP growth target to 7.9 or 7.8%. So then what is the reason? I mean, why there is so much of difference between the, when everything is honky dory? Why and from where this income will come? This if the GDP is not going to grow to that level. Mr. Bhattacharya.
So sir, एक तो है, you would have noticed दो economists, and generally the economists बहुत बंगाली हैं, and Dipan साहब, हाँ मैंने you Dipan साहब, तो that's a clear explanation कि ये लेकिन मैंने I completely agree with Dipan साहब. So that you remember I started in the thing short term, medium term, long term. To my sense, it's useful to think of this current crisis or the current phase of how the cycle evolves in terms of a survive, revive, and thrive. तीन phase में. So मैंने 2020 गया survival में, but at some point revival started, and reviving very, very well. I mean, March numbers were excellent this year. March this year was excellent. फिर उसके बाद then the crisis hit. We are back again, as the governor also, RBI governor also mentioned. Now we need to revive and sustain growth. So revive add कर दिया वहाँ पे. So back to the revival phase. Problem is, both Shomu and I, that we are talking about your World Bank forecasts are for this year. This is what I consider the short term. जहाँ पे vaccines नहीं है, there is this loss of confidence. डरे हुए हैं लोग, people have lost their incomes, etc. And Dipan Saab hit it completely on the dot. This is a global phenomenon which has been happening right from the demonetization phase. So this entire phase of digitalization, going cashless, digital payments, and then all the other technological developments that have happened, taken place, marketplaces, etc. I am also very, very confident that I think given the infrastructure, our logistics infrastructures have improved significantly. Transportation is much better. The freight trains now, goods trains now are running at the speed on certain stretches faster than a Rajdhani. मैंने पूरे सब चीज में आप देखें यहाँ पे जितना productivity improving है, digitalization है, our startup ecosystem has become very robust. The PE/VC ecosystem that has developed, funding is now available. There's so many useful innovations which are looking to solve India's problems. वो है, technology has become totally pervasive now. You go to the smaller cities, वहाँ पे भी, people are as familiar with technology. Smartphones are increasing. You don't need computers anymore. Smartphones से काम चल जाता है. Banking, the access to finance, because of all the data that is being generated. छोटे companies को, because of these new fintech companies, data is enabling them to give loans, credit. Robotics, automation, so all of that. Logistics, warehousing, all these marketplaces. ऐसे भी, there are some industries that were doing very well, as Dipan Saab said. So metals, chemicals, pharma, all of us know of these sectors. वो तो है ही, that is going on. इसका problem, there is an obverse side to this problem. Problem is, as Dipan Saab mentioned, I mean, the entire technology, the developments in technology are cutting human beings out of the picture. So, I mean, corporations are becoming more and more profitable, more and more efficient, becoming more profitable. You see the numbers, I mean, EPS numbers, dekhiye, profit numbers, dekhiye, sales numbers, dekhiye, but these are the larger companies. For every large company, there are 10 small companies that have fallen by the wayside. You can produce as much as you want, more cheap, more efficiently, more productively, lekin aap bechoge kis? And for that is something which is, I mean, it keeps me awake at night. We have this, and this is a global problem. I mean, this is not just India. Every country of the world is facing this. India is particularly severe because India is the scale of our population. And that is what the government urgently needs to address. This is the medium and the long term. We have a very good future. I mean, if we can get past this year, maybe the next couple of years. यहाँ पे stabilize कीजिए, फिर उसके बाद जाके we have a very bright future. The PLI schemes, I mean, the new, we are becoming, hopefully will become part of global supply chains. और पैसा आएगा, we have more capital to invest. Infrastructure, the government's focus on capex and infrastructure. So the problem is that this middle part now, the medium term. Medium term, we have to make sure that we set the stage for a long-term sustained 8% growth for the next 10 years. $5 trillion economy, $10 trillion economy, that is what is critical now. Or uske liye, I think the biggest thing that you need to make sure is that the center and the states need to work together, because the center has put in a lot of reform efforts and things, but hai to sahi, all the reforms will happen at the state, at the panchayat level. So, I mean, that is something that both center and the states have to sit together, get together to make sure that the next 10 years, we are getting to a $10 trillion economy.
So, thank you. I mean, Dipan ने पूरी हवाई चेंज कर दी. हम थोड़ा सा ग्लूमी उससे चालू किया हमने इकोनॉमिस्ट को लेके, बट इकोनॉमिस्ट भी अभी थोड़े से नहीं, मतलब बहुत पॉजिटिव हो गए. डॉक्टर सौम्याकांति घोष, Saugata ji has said that the government is worried about, he doesn't sleep in the night, looking at the plight of the small people and small businessmen. What, according to you, the government and the regulator should do to reduce their pain? Or if I ask you other way around,
so far, whatever the fiscal incentive benefits, monetary benefits which they have given, were they sufficient? Are they sufficient? Or still a lot more is required by the government and the RBI to do to reduce the pain of the small people, small businessmen of this country? What do you say about that?
No, let me just add one point over here. I think even though we are economists, but if you ask me privately, all will be happy with the markets going up, because that gives you an ultimately a good rate of return over a longer period of time. So we shouldn't have any qualms over that. Because the simple thing is that, I mean, taking all the factors into account, I think what has happened is now, but on a more serious note, what has happened is now, if you look into the Indian household financial savings, say from 1992 till 2019-20, I remember, despite all these mammoth stock market reforms, everybody having a demat accounts, I remember one data that not even 10% of the household financial savings were in stock markets. So now, I think now, and that data, that is a very good time series which is with the RBI. I don't know the latest data, but my sense is that at one point of time it was 3%. It has hardly moved from that level. So my only sense of satisfaction is that, given the lower interest rate, term structure of interest rates, there has been a significant move, for example, from the bank credit to the capital markets in terms of the corporates deleveraging. And exactly the same phenomenon is happening. People are now understanding the power of compounding and staying invested, at least at the highest level, given the fact that economy has been locked up for the last 1 year. So they are using more of the digital technology to ensure that they get a good rate of return. And this understanding is actually also helping the markets, because this market going up is not only because of FII participation, but retail investors are also coming the big way. I think that's the most positive development. We have to take it from the market development and appreciate the fact that markets ultimately could be divorced from the economic realities. But this is a fact which we must appreciate, and this thing, if it happens over a longer period of time, it will be good for the Indian economy, because at the end of the day, I mean, the stock market is the barometer of activity, because it's nothing but the future discounted stream of cash flows. So therefore, at some point of time, there could be some similarity between the two. Now, having said that, I think as of now, I agree with the point that there has been, with the Shaukat, there has been much disruption in the MSME space. In my sense, the Reserve Bank of India has done a significant amount of heavy lifting from the last 2 years, from 200, and I think to go beyond this current saving, to beyond, I don't know what more it needs to do, because it is giving liquidity to the banking system, but the banking system doesn't leave any liquidity. It's basically the risk averseness nature. In fact, our utilization limits are not fulfilled. We are still our working capital utilization limits on the lower side. So people are actually not coming back and taking loans, because they know that loans could be also available at very low rates in the markets, given that given the abundant liquidity. So that's point number one. The second point is, so therefore the RBI, I am not sure whether it can do anything or more, but what is more important today, given the fact that there has been significant amount of corporate deleveraging, corporates taking recourse to capital markets by issuing bonds, I think only fiscal policy can now rekindle the animal spirits. And fiscal policy here doesn't mean that I am talking about cash transfers. Even though fiscal policy, I have actually recently an article where I have coined a new name, which I am calling compassionate fiscal policy. So by compassionate fiscal policy, what does I mean? I mean that you give at least some rebates to the common man and the common business at the bottom of the pyramid. For example, the Gujarat government has done such a wonderful job by for one year it has written off all property taxes, electricity taxes for the state. What will be? I think that is a very good step, and I think states and center needs to take these type of streams. GST waiver could be the first important thing. The other compassionate fiscal policy could be waiving of all, for example, the GST on this medical equipment imports which is coming into the country. The other important thing, and that's the most important thing, and that is the most appropriate time, is basically readjusting the fuel prices. because that day I was speaking to somebody else, and the argument was that it is from the government circle was that right now even the fuel prices are very high, but since people are not going out, it will not impact them. But then I had asked them a straight question, sir, today in Mumbai, the fuel prices, I think today it is now close to 102. So if you want to bring it down tomorrow, how much you can bring it down? 5 rupees, 10 rupees, but that will not make any difference. So why don't you use this opportunity and straight away have a line item in the budget saying that 75 rupees is the price of petrol, or say 80 rupees is the price of petrol, which you're fixing enough. And the remaining amount of whatever revenue foregone we are going to do it, that could be given as a separate line item, and the center and states could actually take responsibility for that. Because ultimately, I think we are not going anywhere, because the way fuel prices have been moving and the way that globally the fuel prices are moving, at some point of time, we need to have a full stop to it. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to pull back from here when the economy depends, because at petrol and diesel at such a high level, I don't think any economic recovery will be economically feasible, at least from my perspective. So, and the final point which I like to make is that the bigger companies will continue to do very well, because they are lean. They have been able to ensure that working from home, they've been able to save a lot of cost also. They have also been able to, adjust the employee cost and other things. But what has happened is that the small companies actually, has a lot of them fallen for the wayside. And in fact, for the small companies, if you do a listed analysis of the listed companies in terms of the turnover, you will see that the employee cost has been much higher than smaller companies, indicating that they are actually bearing the pain of all this. So my simple sense is that, and we have given a lot of suggestions to the government also, written about it, how we can actually help the smaller companies. Some of the suggestions have been implemented, but I think we need to go much beyond this, so that this entire MSME sector is actually saved, because a lot of this restaurant hospitality business have actually fallen by the wayside. And the way the things are moving, the way the prognosis of the virus as of now looks, and the way the pace of vaccination, I think it's going to be a difficult the movement going forward. But again, I repeat that the markets could actually not give you an inch of what is going to happen in the next the quarter or so on.
Thank you. Yes. You have given a strong positive note, but at the same time, the caution and looking at the short-term problems. So, Dipan, having heard to both the economists, let us come back to the markets. Now, you see, as if you look at the Sensex journey, from 80 to 90 on a low base, it went up by about 7 times in 10 years. And then thereafter, the next 10 years, 7.5 times again, from 90 to 2000. From 2000 to 2010, 11, about 3.5 times. And from 2010, 11 to 2020, 21 now, again 3 times. So when we are sitting at almost about 51,500 of Sensex, do you think that we can replicate that? That in the higher base, we can go 3.5, 4 times in 7 to 10 years, just like some of our very big analysts and researchers are saying that we may touch Sensex 2 lakh in next 10 years. So, number one on this. Second, what an investor should do in short term, because you see this market is not made of only the investors who are looking at 3 years, 5 years or 10 years. That may be hardly 2 or 3% today. But the rest of the retail investors, they are coming in this market, many of them only for a day, some of them for 15 days, 1 month, a few of them 3 months, 6 months or 1 year. So can you take us through that intermittent journey, dividing the period from 1 day to maybe next 3 years, 5 years, what can happen?
Okay, Ashokji, I entered the market in 91 when the index was around 1900. And I did not think it would go to 50,000. But now I am wiser and I feel that in my lifetime, I can see 2 lakh. I don't know when it will happen, but it is possible. It's a simple power of compounding which is coming into play. And this decade is going to be a fantastic decade for stock market. I really feel it in my bones, and I can, go draw on my 30-year experience that I don't feel as good as I felt just now. I know that there is a lot of stress in the economy. Individual households, there are big problems, health problems, economic problems, and nobody has really a solution to it. But as things stand, I think we are going to see a very, very good times for the country over the next 10, 12 years, and all the various structural reforms which we have taken place, be it GST or be it reforms in the farm sector, reforms in minerals and mining, in the power sector, export-oriented businesses, ethanol policy, PLI. I think this government has done so much in the last 5-6 years, and it continues to address all the structural problems of this country. That I feel that next 5-7 years is a good time to reap whatever we have sown over the past 4-5 years or so. Like the NPA problems have been resolved. Banking system, the banking sector, which is the heart of any economy, is in far better shape in terms of capitalization, in terms of risk management, in terms of efficiency. So I think the key sectors and the key elements are in place for the economy to do much better over the next 4 to 5 years or so. I don't want to put any particular number to it. That is point number one. As regards your question about the day traders or the week traders, all I would say is that please try and change. This is a great market. And if you have a nice strategy for investing in the medium to long term, then a lot of wealth will get created. If you're going to play short term on a daily basis or weekly basis or so, then you have to be a very good trader. And in all the many people I've met in the market, there are very few very good traders. Lots of good quality investors, but very few traders. And try your hand at it. I mean, I'm not saying that every person is a bad trader, but if your track record for day trading or short-term trading is good, then by all means do it. Nothing wrong with it. But if your track record is not that good when it comes to day trading or short-term trading, then please throw in the towel and have a strategy for long-term investing. And I think that's going to be the way to create a great deal of wealth for yourself and your family. And there are many ways of investing in the market long-term. You have the mutual funds, you have portfolio managers. You can do it yourself as well. I think a lot of investors are reading up on the companies, and now with Google and so many websites which are giving information, research reports at free of cost, I think this is a great time for someone to experiment with investing on their own as well. So I'm a firm believer of long-term investing. And I think that that's the best way to play the stock market. Leave the short-term trading to the absolute professionals who have a good track record. So that's all would be my advice.
So according to you, this 51,000 of Sensex and 15,500 plus of the Nifty is standing on a real footing, real reforms, strong corporates, strong future earning capacity, and not a bubble. Is it not a bubble?
No, it's not a bubble. It will end in a bubble. Yeah. But
that is the assurance.
But we don't know when it will end. Let's not talk about bubbles at this point of time. Let's just focus on the present. And the present is certainly not a bubble. We all us analysts are always complaining about high price to earnings multiple. But do keep in mind that there's kind of a complete capital account convertibility. So the FIs who are valuing Indian stocks, for them, the interest rate is 1 to 2%. Of course, interest rates for us is anywhere from 7% or so. But for the average investor coming in from abroad, his cost of capital is less than 2%. And therefore, when he's looking at buying into Indian companies, and now hopefully with the rupee stabilizing, and we haven't seen a huge depreciation despite this pandemic. In fact, rupee has appreciated. A lot of the currency risk also is going out from investing into Indian equities from foreign investors. So when they're looking at this country and looking at their cost of capital, we have always seen that whenever there is growth, price to earnings multiple do move up. And that's what is happening just now. Of course, there'll be corrections from time to time, no doubt about that. but they will all be eventually bought into. And as I said that I think that the overall economy should do so much better. Corporate profits, especially for large companies, good quality mid-cap companies, will do so much better. It'll truly surprise you on the upside. And that's what will take the stock market up.
Good. So let's come to the final rapid round. Mr. Bhattacharya, what is the way ahead, the road ahead for Indian economy? And what message do you want to give to mainly the investing communities here? There are some corporates also, some professionals also. So what is your last message on the Indian economy, the way forward?
So, I mean, I think a little wobbling in the next 6 months till the vaccine strategy is decided. I completely agree with Dipan Saab that, I mean, if we do not mess up in the next 2 years, somehow or the other, if global conditions will be good and things, I think we are set. I think there are, I mean, we have a young set of people who are willing to learn. People are increasingly more entrepreneurial. So when more and more people are becoming, I mean, coming out with new innovations to actually solve problems. The government has also set up a lot of digital platforms. Now it's so much easier to get government services than what used to be not even 5 years back. So those are, I think, so I mean, given if everything goes right, if next pandemic doesn't hit us again sometime, possible, that is always a possibility. One thing that I need to say that we need to increase our R&D expenditure. We are so poor at R&D that, I mean, we are contract manufacturers in every field. Koi innovation I need. So we need to increase R&D. I mean, so given all of this, I agree with Dipan Saab that we have a good future.
Yes, sir. Dr. Soumya Kanti Ghosh, your comments?
Yeah, I'll just see the hypothesis which was making is that perhaps this pandemic has taught investors the beauty, the positive aspects of being a financially literate person. So that's actually, and that is one of the reasons why the markets have been going up. Let me give you one data, and this is the point which I wanted to make. In 1991-92, the total percentage share of shares and debentures in household savings of India was 15%. This number in 2019-20, after even all this hullabaloo, is only 1.94%. So basically, I can only say that if the households preferred these shares and debentures with capital markets as an alternative instrument for financial savings, the markets can only go up from here. So I am trying to make a distinction between economic reality and market reality. But so this is point number one. So I think from that point of view, we should not be too much bothered about and meltdown in the markets, even though, as Dipanji was saying, there could be some corrections here and there as any market will show, because there has been a little bit of price discovery. The second point which I'd like to point out, and which is the most important one, and that is also the reason between the markets also improvement, is basically the financial sector. The RBI has been extremely successful in bringing back financial stability to the market, and the banking stocks, especially for example for our bank, with an asset with an provisioning coverage ratio of close to 90%, I think now has weathered most of the storm. So therefore, I think, and that is one of the reasons that why this current rally is also, the banking stocks is also reading the rally, which is actually a real rally, because banking sector, most of the larger legacy assets are now being provided for, and if the bad bank is provided, that will provide further impetus to the markets. Now coming to the economy, I may not be as confident as the markets, because of the simple reason is that every day we are hearing reasons of a new variant coming in. Yesterday we heard the news about the Delta variant. Now all other countries are reducing the time gap between two vaccine doses. In India, we were actually vaccinating around 40, I think 55%, 50% of the people with the second dose on 13th May. Today, this number is down to 9%. So there has been a subtle shift in the vaccination strategy, which we are now vaccinating more of the first dose. But if God permits, if there is a third wave, and if the news says that people with only one dose, that is not going to be efficient, in that case, again, the strategy could change. So I think if I take all these factors into consideration, the vaccination picture is still not clear, even though the government is trying its best. So if that is the case, we could still see some lockdowns happening, some pains happening going forward, and possibly we have to live with it at least in the next couple of months in the current financial year. But I agree with the fact that so basically the story will be continue to be asymmetric. Growth outlook could, I mean, basically there are now talks about alphabet like Tableau. It will go up, go down, go up, go down. So I'm not going to the alphabet one, but at least it doesn't inspire me very much in terms of an even growth story in the next, in at least the next couple of months in the current fiscal.
Thank you. Point well taken. So, Dipan, just last, rapid fire. Of course, it was not like rapid, but before we take up the questions, because we are running out of the time, your last, some kind of hint or recommendation, either a segment or a particular stock also, if you are permitted to do so, for our investors, because majority of them are the present here are the investors.
I will not disappoint. No, I will not disappoint. So I'll tell you what I'm doing personally, and these are all disclosures are known to everyone, so the biases come into play. We're very positive on the banks. See, if you're looking at the economic activity moving up, then banks are going to be doing extremely well. And then depending upon your risk appetite, you could look at HDFC, Kotak, or if you have higher risk appetite, then I like banks like IDFC First Bank and Federal Bank also are quite interesting at this point of time. We like NBFCs as well. And Bajaj Finance, I think it's done very well today, but if it is able to convert itself into a fintech player, then maybe sky's the limit for that stock. Within the NBFC,
Axis को भी थोड़ा plug कर दीजिए दीपान साहब.
Axis Bank is a great story to invest in.
No, their vested interest will come. Okay.
So within the NBFC, we like gold loan companies, microfinance companies, good quality companies over there. So that's one investment theme that investors could look at closely. The world is changing and digital is becoming central. So a lot of Indian software companies, especially mid-cap software companies, should do very well. They are gaining a lot of traction, good order inflow. So likes of Mindtree, L&T Infotech, LTTS, Emphasis BF, I think all of them should do exceedingly well. And one last note that I want to leave your investors with is that we are entering a very, very exciting phase in the primary market. In the next 12 months, we should see a listing of companies like Paytm, maybe even Byju's, and so many of these new age internet-based businesses. I would say don't shy away from them. If you don't buy them, the foreigners will buy them. See, what happened in China and what has happened on the NASDAQ is that everybody kept on saying that no, these companies are making losses and they are trading at such huge valuations. We don't know how to value them. How can you buy 30 times sales or so on and so forth? But these companies kept on growing. They kept on creating monopolies and they kept on creating value. So I think that we're entering into a very exciting phase for the capital markets, where we'll have a whole host of new age digital business being listed. And I would stick my neck out and say that at least 25% of your portfolio should be in these new age businesses, which I would say are businesses which will survive and thrive in the next decade.
Okay. Thank you very much, my dear friends, my panelists. With that, now we have, of course, we have run out almost about 6-7 minutes more than our scheduled time. But there were some questions which came on the chat also that none of you have touched, I think, the problem of unemployment and the very small businesses plight. So what do you say, if any one of you, Mr. Bhattacharya, if you can, what is the answer? I mean, who is going to solve this problem of great unemployment in this country? And if there is a unemployment and lower level, there is no income, no money, then don't you think that how the bigger people can thrive? I mean, there can be some kind of unrest.
Shummo, I think, is better qualified to answer this. Kuch cheez mein we need to become more imaginative. What is the biggest problem now? Healthcare, as we have figured out. Our healthcare system, particularly in the rural areas, small town. Agriculture is likely to release a huge amount of people from as more efficiencies come into agriculture. Some basic skilling laga ke, Many of these people can be used for secondary and tertiary healthcare services in the villages. Anganwadi workers को और train करके a higher level of healthcare. इस तरीके से I think unemployment का उतना मने, so all the marketplaces you will have more and more platforms like Swiggy, Zomato, इसका Flipkart, ये सब ये करते रहेंगे, but those will not be quality jobs. So to increase the level of income, I think some basic education में, healthcare में, all the areas that we are deficient. ये areas में I think some basic amount of skilling is needed. That will absorb a fairly large amount of people.
Yes, sir.
उसके बाद then we'll see as we go.
What do you say, Dr. Ghosh, about the problem of unemployment?
I think I echo Shougata's point. I think in India, the problem is, of course, unemployment is current level, but the problem is more of underemployment than unemployment. And we actually produce a lot of low quality, low paying jobs. So the only way which we can get out of is that, I mean, the new education policy in this direction is actually could be quite helpful, because it plans to set up a lot of high quality institutes in India. So as long as you are not providing high quality institutes and the service in this area, for example, the service sector, the high quality services, the income of the masses will not go up. So therefore, today you will find that there is a significant amount of income disparity. The jobs which are paying as low as 15,000 a month are actually produced, significantly, but high quality jobs are very difficult to get. And that problem we need to solve. That's a long-term problem that can be only solved if we concentrate on high quality services, because at the end of, and manufacturing is of course one of them, but I don't see, to get manufacturing sector, the government has been pushing up for infrastructure, but I think most of the high paying jobs in the future, if it comes, it will come only through the high-end services.
Thank you, both of you, for this answer. Dipen, there is one question for you. That many of the small cap valuation has run up more than even the large cap in some of the segments and spaces. So what do you say about this mid cap and small cap, whether people should be cautious about it, or whether these valuations are okay?
No, see, investing in the stock market is all about being cautious, okay? And you cannot take any company for granted. But I do feel that whenever there's a revival in the economy, small mid-cap companies will do well. And because of the base effect, you will find that their earnings will grow at much faster pace than the large cap companies. And right up to, I think, March 2021, we had seen the large cap companies doing exceedingly well last 3 years or 3-4 years. But I think that at some point of time, the tide also turns, and mid-cap companies also then do introspection. They do their own internal adjustments, and whichever mid-cap, small-cap company has survived the last 3-4 years, I think they've emerged much stronger. And valuation-wise, of course, they may appear to be expensive than large cap, but the street is expecting that their earnings growth also will be significantly higher than large cap companies. Base effect being one of the primary reasons. And overall economic activity moving up, better capacity utilization, benefits of operating leverages, I think all of that will come into play. And in any bull market, it will be the mid caps, the large caps, which will do well. And you will see in the next 5-7 years or so, this whole concept of mid cap becoming large cap. I think we haven't seen many mid cap becoming large cap, but you will see that in the next 5-7 years.
So one, my friend Mr. Bansali has asked in that case that, can you give the names of top 10 companies who can become a big top player in the long term of 5 to 10 years?
That's a difficult one to answer at this point of time, because even those companies don't know that they're going to become very large. But I think that, see, there are certain sectors which are very interesting, which will become mainstream going ahead. One of them is insurance. Right now, only one insurance company is there in the broader market indices. I think we will see more and more larger insurance companies becoming larger, getting listed. There's of course the LIC IPO, and this is a sector which will gain in terms of percentage of market capitalization. And I wouldn't be too surprised if some of these new generation businesses, the likes of Flipkart or Paytm, I think these businesses will get listed somewhat between mid cap, large cap, but will become large cap in the next 5 to 7 years or so. So I would say that The real sort of so-called mid to large cap you will find in something like insurance, NBFC, new age businesses to an extent, and even maybe even in software, where some of the mid cap companies are showing very promising trends.
Thank you, Dipan. Ankit, anyone else is there for question? Anybody has raised the hands there?
No, I don't think
Is
so.
there anyone you can raise physical hand here? Some of my friend, another 2-3 minutes, we can where we'll get Dipan. Otherwise, he comes only on television. He doesn't answer
Yes,
even
yes.
questions.
You can call me anytime, Ashok
Firoz bhai, anything? You had said somebody has raised the hand, physical hand.
There's
Who is-
one question that I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says since debt is delivering lower returns, investors prefer investing in equities. What is your take, Dipan, on this?
See, that's one of the reasons. No, we are seeing a shift away from debt into equity, and we spoke about the surge in liquidity coming into the market. And this is a very powerful trend, what we call as financialization of savings. And we are going to see that this trend only gather momentum going ahead or so. So I'm very, very confident that the next 5-6 years or so, we'll see more and more investors looking at risky assets like equity. And they'll find a way to, park their savings over there. There are so many avenues. So yes, completely justified.
Nilesh, I believe your question is answered. Hemant bhai, your question is also answered.
There's one question to both the economists, I would put it, whoever wants to take it. Is the finance minister doing well in this situation?
They cannot say no.
Ashok, I want to have the last question.
Okay, Dipan can take it. Dipan can take it.
Okay, because since I've got two of India's best economists, and there's something which keeps me awake at night, which I want to address to both of you, sir, is that what is the end game for this sovereign debt? Right from USA to India to Japan, every single country, the sovereign debt is keeping on increasing. What is the end game of that? And how should we prepare for it? Because it's going to happen in our lifetime that particular problem is going to be, you're going to face that problem front and upfront. So what are the signs? What is the end game? And how should we prepare, sir? I would like both of them if they can give their views, sir.
Okay, Dr. Ghosh.
I think as far as sovereign debt is concerned, I think as long as it has a lower composition of debt denominated in dollars or foreign currencies, I think we are safe, because our debt is only 4% is in the dollar denominator. So I think that's the cause for satisfaction. But to me, if you ask me, I think in macroeconomics, there is a lot of things and a lot of debate. I think that we can discuss this later. For example, I'll give an example. Fiscal interest rate is always estimated. Fiscal deficit is basically, one is a flow concept, and interest rate is calculated on the stock of outstanding debt. So one is a stock concept, one is a flow concept. So there are several ways. And if you look into this debt to GDP ratio, I think there was a paper by Carmen Reinhardt, who is now the chief economist of World Bank, after the crisis, that over 90% it will become sustainable, but it never happened for any of the economies. So there are pros to it, contrasts to it, but for a country like India, I think even though I am in support of fiscal expansion, but the problem in Indian context is that we don't have a predefined fiscal rule. So the moment you say in the public that we should have an expansionary fiscal policy, everything everyone gets broke, and people just do left and right expansion, right? So I think that is what we should always avoid in the public domain, because if tomorrow, if we say, and it immediately will see that everybody is talking about this fiscal expenditure, because it is for me, as if I give an example, the government in its endeavor to give a 3% deficit to the market increased in off-sheet balance or balance sheet balance liabilities to an abnormal levels. Now they're cleaning up that number. So my only sense is that yes, fiscal prudence is better, but we should distinguish between fiscal prudence and fiscal austerity, because at the end of the day, both of the terms have different meanings for a developing country like India.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Saugata.
No, I agree with Shomod. So when you remember US में the long time back the Treasury Secretary had said US Dipan Sahab, so dollar denominated debt. So the dollar is our currency, but your problem.
Problem is yours.
So long as the dollar is there, reserve currency, कुछ भी करो. It doesn't matter really. I mean, and for countries like Japan, everything is local currency. So 304% of GDP. हमारा भी, as Shombo also mentioned. So I mean, it's rupee denominated. I mean, the good thing is it's not foreign currency denominated. There are a whole host of other problems that can come in. I mean, if you're not able to manage that, inflation will go up. Again, you tighten rates. Again, a whole bunch of things. But I'm not going to get into that. But again, I mean, it'll be a problem winding down balance sheets. I mean, that's going to be a problem. But so long as it's leading to productive growth, I think it's okay. But it's a long process. I mean, it's a jaldi hone se the whole structure, house of cards will come crashing in.
If you all three agree, can we take some 2-3 hands are raised? Or if any one of one would like to leave now, any of my panelists?
I'll just add one point over here and then we can actually summarize. I think you should always remember that US, the dollar is a reserve currency. So US can get away anything doing. US is the largest current account deficit in the world. But so basically it can, but dollar is a reserve currency. So it can go on doing anything. So, and ultimately at the end of the day, India is a capital scarce country. US is actually a capital importing. US is not that. So we need to take these factors into consideration.
Thank you. So before we take any further questions, I'll request Ankit for the vote of thanks. And if thereafter, if Dipan is ready to stay for some more time, we will take some more questions. Any one of you, I mean, if you are staying, but let us have this formal vote of thanks for everyone. Ankit.
Yes, thank you. So first of all, I would like to thank both our economists, Dr. Soumyakanti Ghosh and Mr. Saugata Bhattacharya, for giving us a perspective and the facts of the economy, where the economy is there, and what actually we should look at in the economy as such. So normally, as investors are there, most of the investors are there in this, we normally look at the markets and tend to forget the economic problems that the country is facing. So I thank both of you for giving us a different perspective to it and some thought for us to take it further. And yes, thanks a lot, Dipan, for your, I would say, the positivity that you put it in this to our audience. And I think the markets are always right. So we may talk upon or discuss about the things, but one thing is there, that the markets, whatever they do, are always right, and we just need to get the right places in place, right things in place, and perspective to see to it that we catch the right stock. So thanks a lot, all of you, for attending this and giving the opportunity to our investors to get your perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you, the audience also. All the one who.
Thanks a lot. Yes. Thank you very much, the audience. I hope you have got what you came here for, and we'll be organizing many such more webinars for you to come and attend and have a different perspective of the economy and the markets. Thank you very much.
So, my personal thanks to every one of you. And with this, we continue. Mr. Bhattacharya, thank you very much. You want to leave, I think, because of the timing. Dr. Ghosh, if you are there for some time, it's it will be fine. Otherwise, please, because we are already exceeded the time, so I will not force you. And Dipan may continue for some time if there are some questions. Devesh Yavar has raised the hand. Devesh, can you unmute yourself? Can we unmute Devesh? Devesh, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, sir, I am unmuted now.
Yeah, please ask your question.
Yeah, thanks for giving the opportunity. My question is to Dipan sir. Like we saw in steel sector, there was a lot of consolidation going forward for last 7 to 8 years, and the cycle turned after post 2008 bull run. So same is the case with shipping and shipbuilding sector. Many of the Indian companies are bankrupt in shipping sector and shipbuilding as well. And there is a lot of capacity shortage. So what are the early signs to watch for if there is a case for shipping cycle reviving?
See, it's a nice question, and I'm very positive on the PSU shipbuilding companies. Okay, I think like Mazagon Docks, and the other one, they have got Garden Reach, Mazgaon Docks and Garden Reach. I think they both have got huge order book position in place. Valuations are attractive. These are long gestation businesses, but I think they have reached an inflection point. And next 3 to 5 years, you will see their earnings go up, multiple. They'll not go up 5-10%. It will go like 3-4 times. You will see the profits go up from these levels. It's not a very once the capital is in place, it's not very capital intensive per se. And being PSUs, they will distribute a lot of their profits as well. So yes, very positive on shipbuilding companies per se. Shipping companies, there's only one worth investing, Great Eastern Shipping. But I would feel that there are good opportunities elsewhere in the stock market rather than shipping. But yes, shipbuilders, I'm positive.
Yes, sir. All the
Thank you.
PSU shipbuilders are available in single-digit Ps
That's right. So that's also the reason why I'm very positive on them.
with cash on balance sheet.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hemant,
Thank you, sir.
Hemant, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Yes, sir. My question was that this currency of Indian rupees be pegged to US dollar like other countries, Gulf countries?
We should have asked that question to the economist.
Economist. Anyway, so next is Mr. Dharma Rajan. Are you there?
Yes, sir, I am there. In fact,
Yeah,
my
please.
question was directed to the economist actually. Probably if Mr. Ghosh is there, I don't know. I just want to
No, he's
know, given the current critical money supply situation, do you think the RBI will print money?
No, RBI is, as what we read from the reports, and recently with the RBI governors, we get the message that they are not interested to print more money at this juncture, because already country is facing with the inflation problem, and they cannot increase the rate of interest, which has been benign. So I don't think, according to me, RBI may not be. Dipan, you have any other view on this?
No, I think broadly there, as one of the economists also said on the show, that RBI has done all the heavy lifting now.
Yeah.
And actually the ball is in the court of the corporates. Now the companies have to start delivering. You've given everything to the companies, low interest rates, low taxation. I think 25% corporate tax for Jindagi mein dekha nahi hum log ne. So now I think let corporate India start to deliver.
But how will they tackle the
Mr.
liquidity?
We will bring you another webinar, sir, with the economists. Okay, Ravi Gupta.
Okay.
Ravi Gupta, are you there, Ravi Gupta?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
You can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yes, very much.
So, good evening to all. That my question is more of related to macros vis-a-vis to market. And the question is that the numbers which we see, the macros, I mean, are very different, and the reaction of the market. Say, for example, when we see that unemployment is increasing, the credit growth is muted, means that the industry is not picking up, whether it is a small, medium, or the large corporates. And at the same time, the inflation number, if you see, the wholesale inflation is close to 10%, while RBI is maintaining 4.5 or something below benchmark of 5, the CPI. So, because these are all M3 is increasing, savings rate are increasing, but market is also going up. Okay, when savings rate is increasing means there is not much demand. And when we see in the news channels, they say that companies have completed their capex. My question which comes to my mind is why the capex when there is no demand? Now coming to the financials. Sir, just complete.
Yes, continue.
Say, when we look at the numbers, financials, we are happy to see that there is a growth in revenue. The profits are increasing. But to me, it may be because of the 10% inflation, the numbers, revenue, or the profits, because we never see the physical number, whether it is growing. It is not disclosed. Now, if this is a case, is this not a case of bubble? Because it is heated up, market is heated up, and actual growth is not there. RBI has also pointed out about it, because there is no demand. There is an employment, people have been retrenched, the salaries are declined.
Yes, I think let us, I mean, we got your question, Dipen. Can you connect it with this? That when everything is, I mean, from his perspective, looking little negative, how the market is booming and why not you call it as a bubble?
The markets are forward looking and they sense that the economy is going to start doing better. One of the reasons we didn't discuss very deeply is the export sector is doing very well. And a lot of Indian companies are very competitive in terms of exports. We are taking it to what is all this pharmaceuticals, specialty chemicals, software, home textiles. These are all export oriented to an extent. Commodities, steel, aluminium, they're all export oriented or export linked businesses. And that is doing very well. So even in the Indian economy per se is going through a sluggish phase because of exports. And we all know that China is focusing inward and they have reduced their exports. They're not as price competitive as before. So there's a huge opportunity for Indian exporters. I mean, automobiles, auto ancillary, you name any sector, engineering. Every company, every sector which is able to export is now in a better position to export, and that's going to be driving the earnings, and that will lift our economy as well. That is point number one. Point number two, end of the day, the stock market comprises of 400-500 companies, and if they are going to do well at the expense of the smaller players, the unorganized sectors, the unlisted companies, then that's a problem for the country. But from a stock market perspective, it is positive because we are buying into earnings growth and earnings growth is available to us. So from that point of view, I wouldn't say that the markets are in anywhere near close to bubble territory. So I'm not too much concerned about that. And Mr. Gupta, one last thing I'll tell you that stock markets, they climb the walls of worry. And what we have just now is a lot of worries, as you have worries about unemployment, higher inflation, and I also have many worries, but stock markets discount that and they climb the walls of worry. And so long as there is worry and there is negativity and there are two views, stock market will keep on going up. It's only when everybody thinks that, okay, now nothing can go wrong and we are doing exceedingly well and we're looking forward to fantastic growth, that's when the problems will start.
That's true, sir.
Okay, then I think friends, with that, we had a very fruitful discussion, and thank you, Dipen.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it, sir.
I mean, made it a very, very interesting session, and in fact, majority of the people, it seems, had come to listen to your views on the capital market, and they have taken back a great positivity with them, and with a proper logic.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this session as well.
Growth of the companies, corporates are good. And on this positive note, we end this session. Thank you very much, everyone. All my friends, my Rotarian friends, my clients, my corporate clients, individual investment clients, our stock market clients, our friends and associates. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. I hope you will take a lot of things back home. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ankit.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.